And now, the survival show that once survived, putting its first real video on YouTube. So weird. It's Summer Shorts times. In this short, we discuss my favorite post-apocalyptic fiction, and we'll get into something very wrong some readers do with their prepper fiction. Howdy and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 258. I'm your host Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Two things to note before we get into this episode. First, this is the first real I258 video. Episodes are usually released on YouTube with a simple image on the screen. Since I258 is about to hit the 1,000 subscriber barrier for YouTube, I thought it'd be fun to do a real video for a change. If you're watching this on YouTube, hey, be sure to do all the YouTube stuff. Subscribe and slap that bell around. Second, this is a summer short. If you're new here, I258 goes on a pseudo break during the summer. But instead of leaving you hanging all summer long, we put out short episodes every 2 weeks. Then in the fall, we resume our normal programming schedule. With all that out of the way, let's talk about prepper porn. Dystopian post-apocalyptic prepper fiction. That crazy little niche inside a niche dipped in a sauce concocted of blood, fear, thrills, and suspense. It's sort of like a turducken with a side of bacon. Done well, it's exquisite. Done poorly, it's very disappointing. This episode is going to be about two things. The first part is going to be about my favorite pieces of prepper dystopian post-apocalyptic fiction. The second is going to be a perspective on this type of literature that I think gets lost on a lot of people. All right, so books. This is a short, let's not dally. First up is Alas, Babylon by Pat Frank. This book is a prepper classic. Think EMPs and nuclear war before EMPs and nuclear war were cool. It was released in 1957. The writing style is going to feel dated as a result, obviously. After reading this book, you'll get a deeper understanding of where a lot of this type of fiction comes from. Why I like it. There is the nerd factor. I love post-apocalyptic fiction, and this is a cornerstone of the genre. The second reason is that it is not filled with endless violence, which is pretty much fills the genre now. 1 Second After by William Forstchen, number 2. This is the EMP book that put EMPs on the map. I'd venture to guess it is one of the two most popular books in the genre, the other being Patriots. Why I like this book. The story is compelling. The facts are close enough. There are some nuggets of truth, which are very useful. And the book brings up some situations and problems preppers should consider, both in their handling and accepting of the outcome. Some things just cannot be prepared for. What's interesting to note about 1 Second After is that a lot of inspiration for the book came from both Alas, Babylon and our next book, Lucifer's Hammer by Larry Nevin and Jerry, I'm just going to butcher his name, Pornell, and published in 1977. For those of you who love apocalypse via celestial dangers, this is your jam. But instead of the now popularized asteroid Titawaki scenario, Lucifer's Hammer features a comet. Why I liked this book. It's another classic. Lucifer's Hammer is the genesis of many scenarios, trials, and tribulations we regularly see in contemporary prepper fiction. And it's merely a well-crafted story. Number 4 on my list of favorites is World War Z. The book is written by Max Brooks and was released in 2006. A fun side note, at least for me, is that he is the son of Mel Brooks, who also happens to have written and produced one of my favorite movies of all time. Zombies are my favorite post-apocalyptic scenario. What's funny is I couldn't stand zombies until a friend demanded I read World War Z. Then I fell in love with the genre. Well, The good stuff, anyway. The category has been oversaturated with crap, much like the E&P books. Why I liked this book. The craft is superb and sublime. The book is damn well made. Second, the situations, people, and problems are well considered, and minus the zombies, are very realistic. What I think a lot of people who poo-poo the zombie genre miss is that zombies present a perfect enemy. And when done right, they're not really the most dangerous antagonists of the story. So it's kind of fun, multi-leveled. Two things I should stress. The first thing is I'm talking about the book and not the abomination Hollywood put out on screen. The second point I'd like to make is not to bother with the audiobook. It's an awful, hacked up, abridged version. Get the real book. Don't waste your time with the movie or the audiobook. Last on my personal list of favorites is Earth Abides, written by George Stewart and published in 1949. To say this book belongs in the classics category is a bit of a disservice to the book. This is the classic. Earth Abides is the first post-apocalyptic book. There are things readers should be aware of. The book was published in 1949, and the writing shows its age with a very dated feel. Again, because the novel was released 69 years ago. Why I liked the book. First, it's the original. Second, the book wrestles with some really profound and heady problems and scenarios. You may also enjoy it if you want a reprieve from the hyper-violent material being turned out today. Nothing wrong with that stuff, but it just does get exhausting. There is some violence, but it's not gratuitous, and it fits in the story really well. Honorable mentions. Day by Day Armageddon for those of you into zombies, but only the first book. The series loses it progressively more and more with the rest of the series. Then there's 299 Days for those of you who like prepper books where the government is the villain. There's Always the Road by Cormac McCarthy. And if you want something really different and rarely spoken about, check out Ridley Walker by Russell Hoban. But it's not a light read. Now for the second part. It's important to have perspective, and this type of fiction needs to be put in its place. We love these books because they give us a peek into a reality we'd rather not personally ever be in, but we do want to explore, right? Perhaps they're even our exact disaster obsession, and they consume our attention, engage our minds, and sometimes also play into our fantasies. The trouble comes in when we rely on the author to give an accurate depiction and to fact check. The thing to remember is that these are works of fiction. There are 3 things at play we should cover quickly. Rule number 1 of writing, don't bore the reader. To do this consistently and adequately requires exceptional talent and a practice in the art of crafting compelling stories with rich, fleshed out characters. Fiction receives the suspension of disbelief benefit. This is number 2. And this in turn gives the author room for artistic license. As long as the author doesn't go too far off the rails and can hold their reality rigidly to some set of laws, they retain the right to bend and even break rules of our existence. The real trick is to always mix in some widely held facts to make the made-up stuff feel credible and possible. Thus, suspension of disbelief is not difficult for the reader. There is a lot of elasticity if you know how to play the games right. And these games are important because sometimes facts don't allow you to pump the reader's emotions as hard as you'd like as an author. Then we're back to protecting rule number 1. Don't bore the reader. Here's the other thing. Fact-checking is tedious work. It is also costly for authors and publishers. And authors often rely on the publisher to do the fact-checking, and publishers believe it's the job of the author to do their own damn fact-checking. So you end up with no one fact-checking, especially in fiction. Put these 3 things together, and you get fuzzy facts, abused facts, or flat-out falsehoods. This can be due to laziness, artistic license, or the author is using sensational fuzzy facts as a way of making up for a weak story and characters. Now we're back to these are works of fiction. Yet, a lot of preppers reference them like they're future predictions and case studies. These are not case studies. These are not future predictions. The author is not a clairvoyant. But this genre of fiction is useful for two reasons. The first is obvious. The well-made pieces of fiction are entertaining. They are focused on a topic preppers care about, from passing fancy to obsession. Second, they are a great thought experiment. You're able to say, what if, and then visit dangerous realities without being in danger. So don't use prepper fiction as a Bible. Instead, use prepper fiction as an entertaining and engaging thought experiment. Let it fill your mind with what-if questions. Those are okay. Then explore them in the safety of your favorite reading spot. And that's what I think about that, damn it. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to do all the YouTube stuff. Like this video, subscribe, and slap that bell around if you have not done so already. If you're listening to the actual podcast, you can always go to intherabbithole.com/YouTube to check out the ITRH YouTube channel. Though, it really only has this one video on it at present. However, I do plan to put more on this fall. Show notes, resources, and links from this episode can be found by going to intherabbithole.com/E258. Or you can check out the description section of this video. With that, we wrap up episode number 258 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.